everyone to part 5 of Call Them Husband. Today's ship is TsukiYamaKageHina and the one doing the challenge is Kageyama. I'm very excited, I hope you are too. Let's go. Kageyama was still deep in thoughts when he walked up the driveway to the house. His eyes flickered between the group chat and his private chat with Yamaguchi. He had sent the other a message shortly after starting his way home that he was on this way. They'd be alone for about an hour before Hinata and Tsukishima would return as well. It would have been a good opportunity for the challenge if there wasn't the small detail that it had to be in public. His brows knitted together in a frown, and he was so focused on his phone that he almost missed the excited waving to his right. A young woman stood near the small fence indicating the property line between the two houses and waved him over enthusiastically. Behind her, another person heaved a rather big plant inside the house from a small pile of things stacked in front of it. Kageyama walked over, a little confused and hesitant at first, but the woman's smile brightened and she leaned over the fence eagerly. Hi, my name is Shimizu Ayaka. We just moved here. It's so nice to meet you. She offered a small bow, still not even irritated at the slightest by Kageyama's dark aura, as people like to call it. It was quite an unusual first reaction for the setter, leaving him a little bit bewildered and unsure how to answer. I'm Kageyama Tobio. Well, it's nice to meet you. Looks like we are neighbors now. Yeah, I guess. The silence following as he failed to keep the conversation going, on the other hand, was very familiar. Ah yeah, don't scare him off right from the start. Shimizu-san let out a small, offended huff at the comment and her lips tightened slightly into a small pout. It was only then that Kageyama noticed. My former senpai has the same name as you. Really? Shimizu or Ayaka? Shimizu. She laughed. Yeah, it's not that uncommon. I had another Shimizu at the academy and it definitely got confusing. After a while, I just told everyone to use my first name to avoid confusion. Kageyama nodded along silently. The conversation worked much better as soon as she found something to talk about. It very much reminded him of the midnight meetings he sometimes had with Tadashi when they couldn't sleep and would meet in the kitchen by accident. Behind them, the setter heard the quiet clicking of a door falling shut and turned around. He was met with the all-too-familiar sight of his boyfriend emerging from the house. Yamaguchi curiously inspected the situation and walked over to join them. Hey. Hi, nice to meet you. We are the new neighbors. From the corner of his eye, Kageyama could see the other woman, whose name he still didn't know, roll her eyes at that, but smile. It's nice to meet you too. And who do I have the honor with? She asked over politely and laughed. Yamaguchi chuckled sheepishly, but he smiled, clearly amused. It was then that Kageyama saw his chance. This is my husband, Yamaguchi Tadashi. He could see the smaller freeze mid-movement. His eyes grew wide, and even at first glance, it was evident that he turned bright red. Ayaka didn't seem to notice and instead opted for grabbing her companion by her arm, deeming now the perfect time to introduce her as well. This is my ex-girlfriend, Hotaru-chan. Hotaru rolled her eyes, though her gaze turned soft as he looked up at Ayaka, who was a few centimeters taller than her. You gotta stop introducing me like that. You give people the wrong idea. Ayaka feigned innocence and just shrugged her shoulders. I'm Kimura Hotaru, her fiancé. It seemed to get Yamaguchi out of his frozen state, and he easily fell into a light conversation with the two. Well, mostly Ayaka. Kageyama, on the other hand, was perfectly content with easing into the background, and he found that Hotada was pretty similar in that regard, though she didn't mind throwing in the occasional teasing remark at Ayaka. In these instances, she reminded him a lot of Kei. Meanwhile, Yamaguchi stole subtle glances at him time and time again. His blush hadn't faded yet, and he seemed to silently search for answers in Hisata's eyes. His own reflected no disgust or discomfort, just a slight confusion. Kageyama took it as a good sign, though he wasn't too sure about it. He was bad at reading people. His assumptions on what they meant had been very much wrong in the past. It was Friday and the day of the big game. To Kageyama it felt all the same. Just another volleyball match he would enjoy to his fullest and bring home victory. Except, this time he'd be faced with a very familiar opponent. As much as he pretended not to be excited, a little more than usual, it was evident to everyone around him. Well, to everyone capable of interpreting his apparently gloomy face of concentration as what it was. He was thrilled to play today's game and face off against his boyfriend. When he exited the changing rooms, the hallway was already swarmed with sports reporters and photographers. In the distance, he could recognize a glimpse of the orange hair as Hinata was being surrounded by them and bombarded with questions. These were the parts of volleyball he usually tried to avoid, but as if on cue, a small group of them separated when he tried to sneak past them and stopped him in his wake. Kageyama-san, Atlas and MSBY will be facing off today, a game the fans have been waiting for, especially those following your early successes. Are you nervous to be put under such high expectations? He looked at her a little irritated. No. Nerves of steel. Impressive. Now, one of your opponents will be Hinata Shoyo. You know him since high school. How would you describe him, and does it feel odd to stand on the opposite side of the net? He's persistent and annoying. He never gives up, even when he should take a break. A sound of protest echoed to his right, and he smirked himself, knowing that the smaller was listening. How do you see him? As a friend? Enemy? A rival? Or... My husband. She froze. Everyone in the close proximity seemed to, including the small ginger he loved so much. Kageyama used the chance to get out of the situation. As soon as he moved, the storm of questions began anew, but he ignored them and proceeded. Hinata, on the other hand, didn't let him off this easy. He fought himself through the crowd and to his side. That was so unfair. How so? He smirked and observed the other closely. His cheeks tinted red as he pouted. You can't just call me that out of the blue. You know that this will be all over the news, right? He hadn't thought about that, but it didn't hinder his ability to play either, so he just shrugged his shoulders. Hinata narrowed his eyes at him. Okay, bet. Whoever wins this season is allowed to propose to Kei and Tadashi. You're on. The game ended with a victory for MSBY. It was close, very close, and Kageyama, along with the majority of his team, swore to make their next encounter a victory. He wouldn't lose the season. Hoshiumi tried in vain to drag him to the after-party, but Kageyama used the first chance offered to him to flee. He and Ushijima avoided the parties most of the time if they could help it. He just felt a little lost despite being surrounded by familiar faces. Today, however, a certain redhead showed up to greet the tall ace. The setter caught a glance of how the tall spiker looked at his former teammate and knew immediately that he'd be the only one ditching the party tonight. He didn't mind. At home, his boyfriend was waiting for him, and he'd much rather rest his head in his lap and think about how to complete the stupid challenge now that only Tsukishima was left. I'm home. He let his sports bag drop to the ground with a sigh and sat down on the small step at the entrance to remove his shoes. A yawn escaped his throat and he rubbed his eyes, suddenly very tired. Already? Did my beloved husband ditch the after-party again? Kei, you know that He froze. What? What did he just say? No, hold on a second. He wasn't supposed to. He looked up at him, puzzled, his eyes widened in shock. Tsukishima laughed at the sight and leaned down to take his jacket from him, placing a tender kiss on his forehead. How did you... Do you know? Know about what? A faint innocence while hanging the jacket up to the side. When he turned around again, it was deliberately slow and a smile played on his face. You are all over social media, you know that, right? Every sports magazine and tabloid already got hold of this story. I just thought surely if Sho was your husband, so are Tadashi and I. Kageyama felt heat assembling in his cheeks as the blonde teased him. It was a challenge. Tsukishima raised an eyebrow, but it didn't last long before he laughed again. Should have guessed it. Whose idea was it? Iwaizumi's. No, that's surprising. He walked past him into the house again, squeezing his shoulder gently as he walked by. Did you... The raven turned around abruptly, his eyes zeroing in on the blonde, who looked at him questioningly. Did you like it? I mean, would you like to... He stumbled over his own words, unsure how to convey what he meant, but Tsukishima just smiled softly. Yeah, it's nice. I'd like that. One day. Kageyama was sure that the warmth in his cheeks had long surpassed the point of concerning along with his racing heart. Who would have thought Tsukishima could be so... soft? I'm keeping this. Couldn't get better blackmail anywhere. You'll stay in this chat just for that, won't you? Well, everything went well so far. Mostly. Kawanishi? Fine. I'll try. And I'll blame you when it goes wrong. All of us? That's a bit unfair. Iwa-chan started it. Yes, all of you. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I hope you liked it. As you see, there is one more part to go, and I'm very excited for this new ship and super nervous. If you liked it, consider leaving a like because it really helps the channel grow, and leave me a comment with what you liked most about this video, like your favorite quote or something, and consider subscribing so you won't miss on anything in the future. Also, I'm sorry that this is a day late. I got kinda mentally ill. I had a bad mental health day, yes. But I'm better now. Special thanks to my nerdy neckos. Check out my other social media, and now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake